Hi, everybody. We have an interesting group of questions that uh, sometimes you're just not sure how to be mm, helpful in a kind of a kinder way. I think we have a real dilemma as human beings um, when we're discussing how to move into a so-called mental plane. I have a number of questions in and around that same thing. So it's quite interesting that a group of questions come in from different places, and you're honestly trying to make sense of what emotional and mental and intellectual all means, and how to set up kind of a practice where you could actually mm, deepen your understanding, because really an individual has to deepen their understanding from their own experience. It's been that way since the beginning in all of our personalities, so it doesn't change. So when you're trying to make sense of things, the first thing you begin to notice is, if you can, is the subtlety of protecting the way you normally function. And as we're sitting here, um, we're listening and trying to see that we're listening mentally, of course, right? Because that seems to be the stereotypical way of looking at things. And at the same time, we're engaging with and are a part of an emotional bias, whatever that may be, that we call personality. So there's a few questions. So I'm going to try and read out what they say, and then I'm going to try and see if I can help to shift the way, at least a little bit, the way you might think about some of the things that you're saying. Um, this one is from Jen Butler in New Jersey, and she says, during the practice of conscious awareness, we are working to heal from the limitations and pain derived out of our humanity. Um, I see humanity partly like that, but not fully like that. So it's really interesting how we look at things. And I mean, this is consistent through all the questions. It's quite amazing. Are the various experiences of awakening described by many people evidence of this healing process? And first of all, I would say that there is an engagement with healing um, from a negative point of view. We're trying to heal some of the negative stuff. And also, we actually forget that we can be happy as well. And we're looking to achieve a balance in both of those, because remember, first thing we're doing is seeing life, and then we're reacting to it through how we perceive that, from a perspective that values us, makes us feel valuable unto ourselves. And that's not a stumbling block. That's just how we are. If we learn something new and it makes sense to us, then that's included in how we see things. It's called through our personality, of course. Our personality is only an energy form that we are comfortable or uncomfortable with. Um, and the thing that we try to keep in kind of a semblance of sameness in our life. In fact, there's no rule that says we have to be the same. But there is a reflex to remain the same. If we make a change, we try to if we use the change in our personality, then we tend to act out in this new way. And it means that we have many options. Not only the options that were there previously. So basically, we're constantly living in a personality and reliving the personality that we have had. Unfortunately, most of that is unconscious, and we defend how it comes out in the airwaves, emotionally, physically, mentally. What we call mentally is often a protection of our emotional responses. It's valuing how we see things or have seen things and trying to maintain a kind of control over what should be expressed by us during our lifetime. And in fact, there's no rule that says that that has to be true. It's just assumed that there is a rule like that. Well, it also makes us feel comfortable and reasonably coordinated if you recognize the person you happen to be living in for most of the time. So somehow you value and devalue based on these particular views that are suggestive of a person that you name you. Really interesting when you start to engage internally and you begin to learn how to shift a perception related to a mental facility. And I'm talking about a real mental facility moving into mind. That movement is quite interesting. It can be really exciting. Unfortunately, when you begin to see a little bit mentally, you start to judge yourself. And, oh my God, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing the other thing. In fact, you are. It's just how you do things. And there's neither any rightness about it or wrongness about it, good or bad. It's just how you facilitate an interaction with other people and yourself. So to move into a kind of understanding relating to that, it is important for all of us to know that we tend to maintain how we've been before. That's a tendency. It's not a rule. It's not a right. It's not a wrong. It's just a tendency. So when you're practicing a way to engage with mind, one of the facilities that you could use, the one that I've been talking about for a while, is a real simple thing. I say, it's easier if you're doing it to call it simple, but it's not that simple to start off with, I guess. When you're engaging with you and interacting with other people, try to see if you can allow yourself to calm down inside and see if you can see the inside of you as if you were hollow, literally hollow. Okay, so far so good. Let's say we do that. Next thing, try to be aware where there are pressures on the inside of that hollow form. Those pressures enable you to consider the possibility that a particular center, chakra, or zephyrat, or whatever you want to call them, I don't care, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me, because that's not, you're not going to get an exam on what you call this in Buddhist orientation or Hinduism or Chinese or whatever it may be. You're just trying to perceive the area where those valves through which energy flows are operating a bit. So, I'll give you an example of maybe what might be helpful and what might not be helpful. So you're looking inside and you notice there's pressure at the solar plexus. because one of the questions is to talk a little about the solar plexus. And all it means is that center has energy flowing through it at that time. The valve is open, and it opens relative to the intensity that is needed by you to maintain the kind of way you see the world, that the world needs to be from your perspective in that single moment. That's absolutely all it shows you. Talking to you, you can say, easy, easy, slow it down. You can talk to it. What are you talking to? You're talking to the energy that's moving through, that already is connected in you to lines of force that you have been practicing in terms of use for many years. Now, you, by watching and not judging and not protecting the form that is there, that you constructed, not protecting it, not judging it, just saying, easy down, easy, take it easy now, just a dialogue with it, will have an effect on that center or that valve. It will slow it down, soften it down. It tends to pay attention to you. If you intensify emotionally and move towards defending a position in place, which is natural in our normal world, for all of us, no exceptions, an idea, defend it of an idea, a way of being, a judgment of somebody else, of you, all of that is you practicing, noticing that energy is used for this or that, or some other thing. Now, we're not taught to do that, but if you look at it from a mental point of view, in a good way, a mental point of view, what you're looking at is an observational relationship. You are looking at it only to notice, to recognize, slowly to begin to understand that you are already practiced in intensifying energy moving through for a particular purpose. Very reflexively, you've been practicing it so long. And valuing it so long. It's neither right nor wrong. It's not a value, it's a condition of engagement. This is how you normally do this. If you wish to maintain how you function energetically in your personality from your perspective, or from your way of seeing the world, then you attend and protect how you normally do things. You are not open to ideas or options different than you already have within you. You are not acting mentally, you are acting, or through the mind, you are acting through the emotional disposition and using the mental facility to come up with ideas to protect you. Think about that for a second. Because one of the questions is, what can I do to broaden out my working, my engaging with the mind? It's a decent question. You may not want to do that, but that has nothing to do with the question. If you practice it for a little bit and it doesn't work perfectly, in other words, you suddenly become another person, then you will be defending the older person, the person that you already practiced to be. Know that that's true because it is real. The realization that it is real allows you to be okay with what you see. You're being honest with yourself. Those inner engagements with mind immediately go, it's like they're drawn directly to that perspective. If you're willing to be honest with that, how can it show you something else within that will help you to see something beyond what you allowed yourself to see before, with no negativity attached to it? But becoming excited about being okay with not necessarily agreeing with everything that comes out of your mouth into your mind through your emotional disposition. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It just doesn't mean it's right. So you're moving into a mental facility that allows you to say, oh, this is interesting. I know I do this. My goodness, I've seen myself do this quite a bit. Now, that's neither right nor wrong. No, that's true. There's no need to defend it. It's never, ever going to go away. But you may just not use it as often as you do now, if you can allow yourself to be okay with that. It gives you a gateway into options that have never been considered before by you, or acknowledged as viable enough for consideration. Somehow we've been trained to think that whatever we come up with is more valuable because it really indents, makes the personality that it comes out of really worthwhile. In the old traditions, there's a consideration given quite a lot of time to by some in the recognition of adaptability to amounts of energy flowing through you and the necessity to have an engagement with the emotional disposition such that you can talk to it, slow it down, be kind to yourself. My God, this is a method I've used. Wow, if I've trained to use it quite a while, then I will likely use it fairly consistently because it's been trained in me. That's it. That's the end of it. If others judge that, then it's because they also have it themselves, but in a different way, some other way. And it is judgeable by others because the process of assessing others is paramount in our world of emotional disbursement with respect to personality. Emotional thinking is dominant. That's neither good nor bad either. It's a stepping stone into a different way of engaging with a higher state. So-called mental state is often an emotionally engaged intellectual perspective. Not negative, just the part of the pathway that we're traveling to try to get into a form, a state where we can notice what's going on inside of us. And that noticing includes being okay with us when we are, but it also includes an assessment of us by us, which is in the harsher line, the coarser aspects of human development. Learning how to be kind and respectful to what you have been and are doesn't mean you have to protect it and maintain it. It means You have used this system for the purpose of survival. And from time to time, understand life slightly different than what you did before. The before part becomes so reflexive that no thought is given to it whatsoever. Only the defense of it is given to it. Fundamentally, all over the world right now, I might as well just make that statement, there is more and more emotional reflexive PR being given through TV and news and all the rest of this stuff to make you react to everything. And there's enough there to react to. But you're training reaction, not moments of lucidity on the mental plane. The one thing that is important to realize, that the emotional mental plane is a mechanism through which we engage with thinking in a logical, natural manner. But it doesn't necessarily mean what we think is logical. Also included is our reflex reaction to validate what we think, because we think it must be true. It's not necessarily true at all. But you have the option to do that kind of thinking where you're watching your interaction, listening to what you're saying, and not necessarily agreeing with it. You do not have to agree with your emotional reflexive responses. And you have been self-trained to agree with everything that comes out of your mouth. And by the way, to disagree with it as well. You've been trained to do that. If you don't agree with what you say, it is the best thing you can do to say it out loud to you, or to say it inside you. I do not agree with me here. Otherwise, you are only agreeing with what you say, no matter what you say. Surely you can see the dilemma of that. So I would ask in a group of 50 to 100 people, how many people have ever done things that they disagreed with now? Hands go up all over the place. And that's legitimate. We've all done so. But would you disagree with something you are doing? Probably. And realize that, my goodness, this is not necessarily something that I totally agree with. And be okay with that. You don't have to agree with everything. It's not necessity. So, just to broaden out the relationship that we have with personality, it is exceedingly flexible, and we're treating it like it's not. I think it's because there is so much space in our personality that relates to the unconscious fields of consciousness. And so much will is necessary to soften down our relationship with what we're watching. We do not have to be harsh on us or others. And if we are less harsh on ourselves, we'll be less harsh on others. The reverse is also true. If you can hear that, the reverse is also true. It's a tough one. I'm not sure if I've covered a whole bunch of this, but anyway, I've covered some of it. One of the very interesting things in Theosophy, there is a thing called ring past me not. I find it very fascinating. It takes up an awful lot of our time, unknowingly in us. It's a boundary line. You can have them personally, a place where you will not go past because it devalues you from your perspective. You cannot allow anyone to know that that you make mistakes. Big mistake. Why? Because you're not letting you know. And when you do, you feel awkward and strangely vulnerable and unkind. Well, not even quite that. You can't even reach that point at that time. You just feel terrible inside. That's a practice of learning how to feel terrible, if that makes any sense. But if you look at it and say, my goodness, there seems to be a place within me that I cannot allow certain things to occur, otherwise I feel bad within me. That in a kind of way is a personalized boundary that we set up. And it's set up through our interaction with life. It's an experiential boundary. Breaking through that can be helped by a mental engagement with it. In other words, noticing, being as empty as you possibly can gives you about 5 seconds to reconsider your need to react, if nothing else. Be okay with that and dialogue with you. Easy, easy now. Come on now. I don't necessarily agree with everything I just said or felt. And why am I feeling that? You're feeling that because the sensory system that exists in you is a field. It reaches out all around you, engages with you and your environment, and gives you a kind of tickling sense, I'm being nice, of something is off based on what you would like to have happen all the time. It's not logical. It's kind of a sensory system. You're just bunting up against a wall that you've constructed for the purpose of being continually validated the way you function. To break through that, you need to be okay with not agreeing with you. But not in a harsh way, in a kind way. Whoa, just a minute now. Whoa, let me think about this. First of all, I perceive emotionally that is there. It's an indicator that something is different than what you believe things have to be like to be validating you. Not bad, just there. It's kind of a sensory system. That's what they all are. The eyes are too. The ears are too. But there is a connection that goes with it that's mental. And the Buddhists and even the Hindus have called this mindful. Be attentive, meaning don't be in it, watch it, see how it functions. Be kind. Okay, this is how I'm thinking this 1 second. It doesn't mean I always think this way. Is it necessary for me to express myself in this particular manner? Maybe, because if I don't, I'm going to be somebody else. Interesting option. Are you okay with not acting out absolutely the same way every time you engage with others? You usually have two. One you're miserable and the other one you're really great. Both of them, you may be pressuring yourself to act out so that others can see you in a good way, bad way. And you'll decide who you give the flavor of goodness to. Or if you're not like that, you might just be really curious about how you function with others. Biggest of all, how you function with yourself. Using the mind, you can watch how you do it, and you do not have to judge it. You can be okay with the you that you are this 1 second, knowing full well you will always not be that you. You are many yous. No reflection on cheap. You have to have some relative sense of humor with this stuff, otherwise it'll drive you to distraction. You don't have the same sense of humor as I do, thank God for small mercies. I have a weird one. Hopefully you have your own little bit of strangeness that no one else can understand. That's a part of you. When you're growing inside of you, there's nobody else that needs to be impressed with you. Absolutely nobody. And the second part, you don't have to be impressed with you either. But you can be curious and fascinated and excited. If you know how you function when you're watching it from a mental state, you will not always agree with the emotional dispositional lines of reference, because they're often linear. Right, wrong, that's more important than this one. You hear that in other people's voices as well as your own. Know you're in an emotional slide rule, and you will use it very, very linearly. But you have to practice noticing it, because that is our reflexive survival construct, which is of great use to us in our day-to-day from our perspective. I'm suggesting that in our day-to-day, we practice a mental facility. Mental facility does not mean it's always in the head. What in heaven's name do you mean, Ron? Well, I started this conversation by trying to make an empty, hollow you. Take a look at what's going on in there. See those centers that you have a little bit of trickle going through. A little trickle is huge. Notice where that flow is. Notice the ones you use more often. Those valves are there and they're practiced. And remember, the frequencies, all frequencies, have a coarser aspect to it, and they have a middle aspect, and they have a universal spiritual aspect to them, every one of them. This is a hard one for some belief systems to make sense of. Emotionally, you say, well, I'm violet in my armpit, whatever, my wherever. A truly violet orientation is a willful orientation at a coarse level. You will want everything to be right, and you will ache to get it right. The same as every other kind of frequencies that do the same thing, meaning express themselves from the coarsest levels to the very refined. So you start bending your attention towards being more important because of certain frequencies than other people. Pull back talk to yourself. Consider the possibility that that's a personalized rendition of that frequency. You are indeed more important in that second. But as you grow, you learn that that's only an aspect of growth. That's a pathway through which you grow. Be kind to it. Respect it. Then when others are doing the same thing, you will understand what they're doing because you do it yourself or have done it yourself. And you're trying to do something slightly different. The internal higher states will find no negativity in this. They only find where you are, how you can be helped. If you're sincerely willing to be helped, then you begin through helping yourself. Little bit at a time. We are trained to judge how things would be from our perspective. It's the only way we can engage with others, from our perspective. We're talking about spiritual growth here. As you begin to allow your mind to engage with that which you are, physically, emotionally, and intellectually, you notice your relationship is a relationship through which you engage with other states. You're a human being. You're on this plane. You wish to be on some other plane and recognize for being that way so that you can feel better within your personality construct or valued. This is what we do. Neither good nor bad. It's just what we do. Beginning to know that that may be true is a movement into a mental state. Ah, caught that. Okay. It's all right. You're talking to yourself. It's okay. I got it. I don't want to miss those things. Because the mind penetrates into the emotional disposition, the mind state, into the intellectual orientation, into the body. It's just nothing but an energetic form. And the breadth within your life of how you can see and understand things will be truly helpful to you in the understanding of others. Not the shooting down of others. I don't mean that literally. I'm talking about putting down people. This is very difficult for us because we've got badges sewn everywhere on our shirt sleeves about being more able than somebody else. It's the nature of what we've been trying to do. And living in a form that has tremendous tools that can perceive things, but only through the nature of how it's being constructed, is a wonderful key to recognize. If you have been constructed this way, you will see things relative to your construction. Therefore, you are not always right, but not always wrong. You're not good and you're not bad. You're just a product of how you function. Those higher states see that and wonder how you can be, or have knowledge of how you can be, helped to broaden out so more energy can operate through you. Now another look at that. From our perspective, is here are the rules, you go by the rules, and therefore now you're worthy of being spiritual. Nobody can be perfect in whatever rules you come up with. You're lucky enough to be able to notice what rules you're even following. But the one unconscious rule you all follow is the self-protection of your personality's orientations. Sound information in the survival of your engagement with how you want to be the rest of your life. Are there options? Absolutely. Will you be perfect at it? Absolutely not. You need to remember that others won't be perfect either, as well as yourself. Why? Because then you can understand you better and get help internally, and if external is on the docket, do that too. Anything that will help. Adjustments to occur relative to the concept of options other than the ones that you already have. Broadening options best you can. You're okay. And you're of great value. Why? Because energy is pouring through you. Becoming conscious of it is very valuable. It means you have to deal with lots of devaluation based on our own self-interest, I guess one could say. I hope that helps a bit, Jennifer, and I hope that helps a little bit Ian from England as well. I think that there's a huge predicament that is indwelling in our species, and that is a legitimate engagement with trying to understand how we can engage with higher states. How can we be a better person? Already defining a better person is absolutely interesting because all over the world there are different definitions. One of the ones I really like myself, and I think it's uncomfortable basically to talk about it in a discussion with people, is that a better person is a person who can handle softer energy moving through them for the purpose of helping others. That's a service orientation, I understand and realize. But we live at coarser levels, and we misunderstand what softer levels would be, legitimately from the perspective of where we're looking at things from. I often think, if you have a dog, it can become a watchdog. You train it to become a watchdog. Somebody knocks on your door, it barks. It's just telling you that somebody's there. But the dog's personality says, I'm the watchdog. I am the one. They won't get past me. And usually the watchdog's about 2 inches off the ground. Because you don't like big dogs in your house. You want to my mouth can't move fast enough for that dog to express itself. It doesn't mean the dog is right. It could be your best friend, but it hasn't seen your best friend. But its perspective is fairly, one could say, closer to the ground. But it sees everything as huge and big. We tend to do sometimes similar things. Not necessarily as real as what we believe, but nonetheless it's what we have. And we work with that. And doing this kind of work through meditation, whether one thinks it's a deep meditation or not a very good meditation, meditation is meditation. In some of us, relative to Ian's question, in some of us, we assume we're at a very deep level, and we may be. For example, if you go into a deep level of meditation and you're still consciously aware, it's difficult for us to assess that level as just there. We have to attach something to it. Deep level, personalized level. Nothing wrong with either one of those things, because that's what we do here. But in fact, they're just states. Watch you in your interaction with any and every level you attain. Just watch you. Be okay with you. The meaning of those levels are less important than the attaining of them. They will never be the same, exact levels. You'll inadvertently be in different states. It's the nature of our learning and our understanding to want to evaluate. If we gentle down, we can begin to consider that the softer we are internally, the more gentler or refined energy can operate through us for a purpose related to helping others and ourselves. Now, here's what I mean by that. If you notice you're in a particular state and you're meditating in your living room, and it's not conducive to meditation from your perspective, calm down. Let you be the one to help you to calm down. Don't devalue you. It's not relevant. Because you're practicing a movement into a different state. There will be a natural reflex for you not to move into that state or to jump into that state and then reevaluate, because that means you're still in charge. That's done so you can slowly let go of that in-charged aspect in this particular reference state. So more subtle energies can move through you, of which most of them you cannot perceive anyway, because our perception levels are fairly coarse. No negativity about that. They just are. It's fine. We grow from where we are, not from where we're doomed to be. But here's a little trick. Each and every able being that's ever been on this planet, from your perspective and from the perspective of reality, that you may or may not even have a clue ever existed on this planet. All those forms are legitimately transmitting from the levels that they have attained in the consciousness levels that surround our particular species, because they were denizens of our species. These may be called astral shells or astral mental shells or even mental shells. There's a physicality to it. It exists, therefore, there's a physicality to it. on whatever level it may be. They emit energy. If you can reach into and towards a line of reference that relates to them in terms of your particular spiritual development, those emissions will help you internally. Stop there for a second. They will have an effect on you. So if you were Christian or Islamic, or if you were Buddhist, or you were Hindu, or anything else I would ever leave out, Taoist, I don't want to leave out anything. Or if you were a scientist, or you were an engaging being of any kind related to some concept, emissions can occur in relationship to that level of existence, because it still exists. The trick is not engaging with something that relates to you getting more right, more able, because those beings had no interest in that particular formulation. They had a great interest in engaging with others to help them be able that's the realm of mental, emotional engagement that is valuable. So you could be of service, because they were service beings. They're no longer in those shells, but the shells are emitting. In the traditional sense, a set of clothes that you had and you wore a lot emit you. That's scary enough. Oh, sorry. That may not be scary to some. But once again, you have to have a sense of humor in this. So the more you practice being helpful to others, legitimately doing your best, not everybody is helpful in the same way. Sometimes the best thing that you can do to be helpful to others is to be helpful to you and your relationship with slowing you down, calming you down. It changes the emissions that occur through and out of you. It's not just something I'm making up. This is a reality. From my perspective, of course. Think about that. Maybe it'd be helpful. Nobody does this perfectly. We do it the best we can when we do it. And we don't do it the best we can when we don't do it. It's significant. Dialogue with you. Talk to you about it. Be okay with you. But you are not only your personality. You're a being of consciousness. You're an energy form, working at these levels, engaging with these levels. I just want to thank you for being patient and not turning off your computers. This is very difficult to listen to, but nonetheless, I think covers most of the questions that have been asked by Ginny and Ian and Jennifer and Chris. I hope I didn't leave anybody out. No, I don't think I did. Thanks. Good night, everybody. Wish you well.